The day I found out my parents had written me out of their will, I was scanning papers for my dad, just helping like I always did. And there it was, in black and white, everything went to my brother. The house, the savings, even the car. My name wasn't even mentioned. I had given up my 20s to care for them, paid their bills, fixed their home, and sacrificed my dreams. But to them, I was invisible. And that was the day something inside me broke. If you've ever been taken for granted by the very people you've given everything to, this story will hit you hard. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and buckle up, because this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about the sweetest revenge life can deliver when you finally stop being the family doormat. From the outside, Claire's family looked ordinary. A small suburban home with peeling white paint, a patchy front lawn, and a car that rattled every time it turned the corner. But inside those walls, Claire carried more responsibility than anyone realized. She wasn't the oldest, she was the only dependable one. While other kids in her high school spent weekends at the mall or football games, Claire was making grocery runs for her mom, picking up prescriptions for her dad, and sitting at the kitchen table late at night balancing her parents' checkbook. Not because they asked, but because no one else would. Her younger brother Ethan was 3 years younger, and from the very beginning, it was clear, he was the golden child. When Claire brought home straight A's, her parents gave a polite nod. Good job, honey. When Ethan scraped by with a C in math, they clapped like he'd won a Nobel Prize. He just learns differently. But he's brilliant in his own way. When Claire landed her first part-time job at 16, working at a diner, her paycheck went toward paying down her parents' credit card bills. When Ethan got his first job, he quit within a week because the manager was mean. Her parents just laughed. He'll find his path. His special. By her 20s, the pattern had only deepened. When their dad's blood pressure medication wasn't fully covered by insurance, Claire quietly dipped into her savings to pay the pharmacy bill. When the roof started leaking, it was Claire up there on a ladder in the rain, patching shingles she had no idea how to fix. When the water heater broke, Ethan shrugged and said, "That's Dad's problem," while Claire spent her weekend YouTubing repair videos and getting burned by boiling water spray. Her parents, instead of thanking her, acted like it was expected. "You're just so responsible, Claire. We don't know what we'd do without you," her mom would say with a smile. And Claire would smile back, even though deep down it stung. Because responsible didn't feel like a compliment, it felt like a leash. Meanwhile, Ethan drifted. College? He dropped out after one semester because the professors didn't understand his vision. Work? He bounced from one get-rich-quick scheme to another, crypto 1 month, flipping cars the next, then some vague startup that never left the idea stage. Every time he failed, their parents rushed in with excuses. He just needs time to find himself. You know, Ethan, he's not like you. He needs more support. And guess who was expected to provide that support? Claire. At first, she told herself she didn't mind. She loved her parents. She wanted them to be okay. But late at night, when the house was quiet, she'd sit by her small bedroom window and wonder, when is it going to be my turn? She wanted to travel. To move out. To maybe start her own business. But every time she saved a little money, another emergency drained her account. Her friends were buying cars, apartments, even starting families. And Claire? She was still the safety net. Still the invisible glue holding her family together. She never complained out loud. But inside, resentment grew like mold in the corners of her heart. Got it, let's move into setup 2, the discovery of the will, and expand it with tension, inner psychology, and vivid detail. This is the TR. It happened on one of those ordinary weekends, the kind where Claire slipped into her old role without question. Her dad had called earlier in the week. His voice was casual, almost cheerful. "Claire, honey, I've got some papers to get scanned into the computer. You know me, I can't figure out this new printer for the life of me. Can you come by Saturday?" And of course, Claire said yes. Because that's what she always did. The house smelled faintly of coffee and lemon polish, the same way it had for years. Her mom fussed around in the kitchen, humming while the dishwasher clattered. Her dad sat at the dining table with a neat stack of manila folders beside him. "There they are," he said, tapping the papers like they were nothing special. "Just need them scanned. You'll probably get through it faster than I could." Claire smiled politely and sat down. She pulled the stack closer, slipping each page into the scanner one by one. Insurance forms. Tax documents. Bank statements. The usual. Until it wasn't. The title jumped out at her in bold black font. Last Will and Testament of Robert and Helen Weston. Her pulse quickened. She froze with the paper halfway in the scanner tray. She shouldn't look. This wasn't hers to read. She knew that. But curiosity, and something else, something heavier, pressed down on her chest. After everything she had done, didn't she deserve to know what her parents planned for the future? She smoothed the pages with trembling hands and began to read. Her eyes darted across the lines. At first, it was the standard language, we, Robert and Helen Weston, being of sound mind. Then came the section that made her breath hitch. We leave our family home, bank accounts, retirement savings, and all other assets to our beloved son, Ethan Weston. Her name wasn't there. Not once. Not in the house, the savings, not even a sentimental item. And then, the line that shattered her heart completely. We trust our children will look out for one another, as family always should. That was it. That was her mention. Not her name, not her sacrifices, not even a token gift. Just a vague expectation that she would continue to pick up the slack, even when she was gone. Her stomach lurched. Her palms went clammy. She could hear her heartbeat pounding in her ears so loud it drowned out the hum of the dishwasher. Her throat felt tight, like someone was pressing their hands around it. She blinked rapidly, trying to keep the tears from spilling, because the last thing she wanted was for her dad to walk in and see her like this. But in that moment, something inside her cracked. So that's it. All these years. All the bills I paid. The nights I stayed awake worrying about them. The vacations I never took. The life I put on hold. And I don't even exist to them on paper. Not even a mention. Everything goes to Ethan. The same Ethan who's never lifted a finger. A bitter laugh almost escaped her lips. She pressed her fist to her mouth to keep it in. Her dad shuffled back into the room just then, carrying a mug of coffee. How's it going, kiddo? Getting through those papers. Claire forced her face into something neutral. She slid the will back into the stack, scanning the next sheet with hands that shook only slightly. Yep. Almost done, she said, her voice even. He smiled, oblivious. Knew you'd figure it out. And then he walked away, humming to himself. Claire stared at the scanner screen, her jaw clenched so hard it ached. When she finally left that day, she drove home in silence. The radio was off. The hum of the tires on asphalt was the only sound. Her chest burned with a cocktail of emotions she couldn't even name. Hurt. Rage. Betrayal. And underneath it all, a chilling clarity. Her whole life, she had been the dependable one. The fixer. The daughter who sacrificed without complaint. And in return, her parents had erased her. That night, lying in bed staring at the ceiling, Claire made a decision she had never dared to before. She would stop. Claire didn't sleep that night. She lay flat on her back, eyes tracing invisible cracks in the ceiling she had stared at since childhood. But this time, it wasn't the same ceiling, it was a prison wall. Every memory, every sacrifice, every smile she had forced for her parents' approval replayed in her head like a cruel film. The will had unlocked something. A truth she had always suspected but never dared face. Her parents didn't see her as a daughter. They saw her as a tool. A caretaker. A safety net. Not family. Just function. Images swarmed her mind, stabbing at her chest like knives. The night she stayed home from prom because her mom's arthritis flared and she couldn't manage the dishes. The summer she worked double shifts to pay her parents' overdue property taxes, while Ethan partied at the beach. The Thanksgiving she cooked the entire meal by herself while her parents doted on Ethan for finally getting serious about some half-baked business idea. She had always swallowed the bitterness, telling herself, someday they'll appreciate me. Someday it'll all be worth it. But now? She knew the truth. It was never going to be worth it. By morning, her body felt like it had been wrung out. Her eyes were swollen from tears she hadn't realized she shed. Her head throbbed from clenching her jaw all night. At work, she moved like a ghost. The chatter of coworkers sounded far away. Even the clatter of keyboards felt like static. Her friend Melissa noticed. Claire, are you okay? You look pale. Claire forced a smile. Just didn't sleep much. How could she explain? How could she say, I just found out my parents erased me from their future. I don't matter to them at all. The mask of normalcy. That week, Claire still answered her parents' calls.
Still stopped by when her mom asked for help changing a light bulb. Still listened as her dad complained about his aching back.
But now, every interaction carried a bitter taste. When her mom sighed, "We don't know what we'd do without you, Claire," the words twisted like barbed wire around her heart.
Without me? She thought. You've already planned a future without me.
You'll be just fine with Ethan, your golden child. One night, Claire locked herself in her apartment bathroom, gripping the sink until her knuckles went white. She stared at her reflection, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a rushed bun, lines of exhaustion deepening across her forehead. "Who am I even doing this for?" she whispered to herself. Her voice cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks. "They don't see me.
They never have."
She slid down to the floor, curling her knees to her chest. For the first time, she let herself grieve not just the will, but her entire childhood.
Every lost dream. Every missed chance at happiness.
And in that grief, a seed of something new took root. For years, her parents had convinced her that family means sacrifice.
That loyalty meant obedience. That her worth was in what she gave, not who she was.
But now, staring into the abyss of their betrayal, she asked herself, what if I stopped? What if I lived for me, not for them?
It was a terrifying thought.
But it was also the first taste of freedom she had ever imagined. The first test came sooner than Claire expected. A week after discovering the will, her mom called. "Sweetheart." Helen's voice was syrupy on the phone, the kind of tone she always used when she needed something. "The electric bill came in higher this month. Could you take care of it like you usually do?"
Usually. That word stung.
As if it was a duty written into Claire's DNA, not a favor.
She hesitated.
Her throat tightened, but she forced herself to say the words she'd been rehearsing in her head.
"I can't this time, Mom. I've got my own bills to handle."
There was silence on the line, sharp and heavy.
Then her mother's voice hardened. "Claire, you know how important it is that the house stays running.
You don't want your father sitting in the dark, do you?"
Guilt. Always guilt. But Claire took a slow breath.
"I'm sorry.
I can't."
Her mom's sigh was loud enough to rattle the receiver.
"Fine. I'll figure something out."
And then the line went dead. The next week, it was the gas bill.
Then a car repair. Then groceries.
Every time, Claire said no. Her stomach twisted each time, her hands shook after every call, but she stayed firm. At first, her parents sounded confused, almost disbelieving. "Maybe she's just tight on money this month," she overheard her dad mutter one evening when she dropped off a borrowed tool. But by the third refusal, their tone shifted.
Her dad cornered her one Sunday when she stopped by. "Claire, family takes care of each other. You know that.
We raised you, fed you, gave you everything. Now you're just going to walk away when we need you most."
She clenched her fists at her sides.
"Everything," she wanted to snap.
But instead, she just said evenly, "I've already done more than you realize.
I can't keep carrying everything."
His face darkened.
"You're being selfish. After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us."
Claire bit her lip so hard it almost bled.
She wanted to scream. "You left me out of your will. You gave everything to Ethan."
But she didn't. Not yet.
Instead, she just turned and walked out.
Soon, the whispers began.
At a family cookout, her aunt leaned in and said, "I heard you've been refusing to help your parents lately. That doesn't sound like you, Claire." Her mom chimed in, loud enough for the whole table to hear. "Some people in this family think they are too busy to help. But we all know who's always been dependable, and who's turning their back." Eyes darted toward Claire.
Heat crawled up her neck.
She excused herself to the bathroom, gripping the sink with trembling hands. Her reflection stared back at her, flushed cheeks, eyes wet with unshed tears. "They are turning everyone against me," she whispered to herself. "Just because I finally said no."
The guilt gnawed at her.
Every time her phone buzzed with her parents' number, her chest tightened. Sometimes she almost gave in, almost pulled up her banking app to send money, just to quiet the storm.
But then she remembered that line in the will.
"We trust our children will look out for one another."
No gratitude.
No recognition.
Just expectation. And that anger burned hotter than the guilt.
Weeks passed. The bills went unpaid.
The house grew shabbier.
Her parents grew sharper with their words, colder on the phone. But something unexpected happened inside Claire. She felt lighter.
For the first time, her paycheck went toward her. She bought herself a new coat.
She started putting money into savings again. One evening, she sat by her window with a glass of wine, watching the sunset streak orange across the sky. And for the first time in years, she felt a spark of peace. This is what it feels like to live for me, she thought. And that spark would only grow as her parents' world began to crumble. When guilt didn't work, her parents escalated. They turned her refusal into a story, one they repeated to anyone who would listen. And like any story told enough times, it began to stick. At the next family barbecue, Claire felt the shift immediately. Conversations hushed when she walked up.
Smiles were tighter. People avoided her eyes. Her aunt finally broke the silence.
Claire, your mom tells me you've been distant lately. Everything okay? Before she could answer, her mom swooped in with a sigh loud enough for the neighbors to hear.
Distant?
Try abandoning us. Ethan does his best, but you'd think the older sibling would step up. Her dad chimed in, shaking his head dramatically.
Some kids only think about themselves.
Forget that their parents work themselves to the bone to give them everything. Claire's throat tightened. Her face burned as relatives' eyes darted toward her, judgmental, pitying, some even disgusted.
She forced a thin smile.
I'm fine. Thanks for asking. Then she excused herself, retreating to the bathroom where she sat on the edge of the tub, fists clenched so tight her nails cut into her palms.
It didn't stop there.
Ethan, sensing an opportunity, began piling on. One evening, Claire dropped by to return a tool she'd borrowed. Ethan was sprawled on the couch in his designer sneakers, scrolling through his phone. Without looking up, he muttered. You know, it's kinda pathetic that you won't help out Mom and Dad. You're doing okay, why not pitch in? Claire froze. Pathetic. Ethan finally looked up, smirking.
Yeah. I mean, they've always been there for us. Well, more for me, obviously. But still. You can afford to throw them a little cash. You don't even have kids.
What are you saving for?
Her jaw dropped. He had no idea. No idea how many nights she'd stayed awake worrying over late bills.
How many vacations she'd cancelled, how many dreams she'd buried, just to keep him and their parents afloat.
But instead of lashing out, she said only,
maybe you should help them, Ethan. You're the one inheriting everything, remember?
His smirk faltered.
Then he scoffed. That's not the point. Family means stepping up.
Claire walked out without another word.
But inside, her fury burned hotter than ever.
Soon, it wasn't just family gatherings.
Her parents started slipping comments into church conversations, into neighborhood chats, even on Facebook posts. Asterisk, it's just so hard when your daughter forgets her responsibilities. Her mom would type, paired with a sad emoji. We always believed in family loyalty. Some people don't anymore, her dad would mutter to neighbors over the fence. And every time Claire saw it or heard it secondhand, it felt like a knife twisting deeper. One evening, after yet another phone call where her mom accused her of abandoning the family, Claire snapped. Stop it, she said, her voice trembling but firm.
Stop talking about me like I'm the villain.
Stop telling people I've abandoned you when I've given you everything for years.
Her mom's voice sharpened.
You've changed, Claire.
You used to care about us. Claire swallowed hard. No, Mom. I've just stopped letting you use me. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then the line went dead.
For the first time, Claire didn't cry after hanging up.
She didn't shake or feel guilty.
She felt relief. Because she realized something powerful. They could shame her all they wanted. They could spin stories, whisper lies, parade their disappointment. But she wasn't playing along anymore. And soon, they would have bigger problems than their daughter's refusal. 4 months after Claire's final confrontation, silence stretched between her and her parents.
No guilt-tripping calls.
No manipulative visits. Just absence. But the whispers didn't stop. In fact, they grew louder, until even strangers were talking about the house at the end of Willow Lane. Ethan, the golden child, had promised everyone that he'd take care of things. That he'd save the family home, manage the finances, and prove he was the true heir to their parents' legacy. At first, it looked like he was thriving.
New car. Expensive dinners.
Social media photos with hashtags like #FamilyFirst and #building generational wealth.
But Claire knew better.
She recognized the gleam in his eyes, the same one he had whenever he showed off something he couldn't really afford. And sure enough, cracks began to show. One Saturday morning, while Claire was out running errands, A neighbor stopped her.
Have you heard?
There's a foreclosure notice posted on your parents' door.
Claire froze. What?
She drove by later, careful not to stop, just to look. And there it was, taped crookedly to the front door in bold black print, notice of foreclosure.
Her chest tightened. She wanted to feel sympathy. She wanted to feel the pull of obligation.
But all she felt was calm.
2 weeks later, her parents showed up at her apartment unannounced.
Their faces were pale, their clothes wrinkled, a shadow of the dignified people who once sneered at her selfishness.
Her dad wasted no time. Claire, we need your help.
The bank's taking the house. Ethan's investments didn't, well, they didn't go as planned. Her mom's eyes brimmed with tears. Sweetheart, we'll be on the street.
Please. Just a little loan to tide us over.
Claire leaned against the doorframe, steadying herself. For years, she had been their safety net. Their fixer.
Their silent donor. But this time? She just shook her head. No. I warned you. I told you I couldn't keep doing this. You chose Ethan.
Let him take care of you.
Her dad's voice cracked. His broke. He lied to us.
All those things he bought, we thought. You thought wrong. Claire cut in sharply. Word spread quickly. The house her parents had bragged about for years was auctioned off. Ethan moved into a dingy apartment across town. At church, at family gatherings, in neighborhood whispers, the story flipped. The very people who once pitied her now shook their heads at Ethan. Such a shame. He had it all and wasted it. If only they'd treated Claire better. For once, her parents had no one left to blame but themselves. One evening, Claire walked past the old family home. The lights were dark. The yard overgrown. The voices inside, her mother's constant guilt trips, her father's sighs, Ethan's smug laughter, gone. She stood there for a long time, the cool night air brushing her skin. And then she smiled. Not because she was happy they lost everything. Not because revenge tasted sweet. But because she finally felt free. They couldn't take from her anymore. They couldn't shame her anymore. They couldn't make her small, or guilty, or invisible. They had gambled everything on Ethan, and lost. And she had saved herself. It didn't happen overnight, but when the fall came, it came hard. Ethan, the self-proclaimed provider, had been gambling not just with stocks and shady business ventures, but with his parents' trust. He had secretly borrowed against their house, taken loans in their names, and poured everything into a get-rich-quick scheme. When it crumbled, so did the facade. The family who once flaunted their perfect golden son now had their name dragged through court documents. Neighbors whispered when notices appeared in the paper.
Old friends avoided them at the grocery store. Claire didn't have to say a word.
She just lived her life, quietly, steadily, successfully. One day, at her office, a coworker asked casually, "Hey Claire, isn't Ethan your brother? I saw something about him in the news, rough stuff."
Claire only smiled.
Yeah, rough stuff.
The irony?
Ethan had spent years bragging about how Claire was wasting her potential, while he was supposedly building an empire. Now, he was living in a cramped apartment, drowning in debt, while Claire's careful savings and career kept her secure. Her parents called again, their voices trembling. "We made a mistake, Claire. We should have trusted you. We should have treated you better. Please, we have nowhere to go."
But Claire had already built her boundary walls.
"You made your choice. Now you live with it," she said gently, but firmly. And for once, she didn't feel guilt. Months later, she walked past the old family home again, now freshly painted, with a new family moving in. A young couple laughed in the yard while their toddler chased bubbles across the grass. The house looked lighter, as if the walls themselves had been freed of the bitterness inside. Claire stood there, watching the child's laughter drift through the air.
And she realized something important. She wasn't carrying the weight anymore.
Her parents had tried to erase her. Ethan had tried to overshadow her. But in the end, they erased themselves. Revenge didn't come from shouting. It didn't come from fighting. It came from letting them drown in the consequences of their own choices. And now, when people talked about her family, it wasn't Ethan the golden son anymore.
It was Claire. She was the smart one all along.
And that was the sweetest revenge of all.
Justice landed. Ethan exposed. Parents ruined by their own favoritism.
Claire free, vindicated, and standing strong. The emotional hook for the audience is crystal clear. Sometimes the best revenge is no revenge at all, just letting people fall by their own choices. When I look back now, I realize something important. Revenge doesn't always have to be loud, messy, or cruel. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge is silence. I didn't fight for their approval anymore. I didn't try to change their minds. I simply stepped back and let their own actions destroy them. Ethan thought he could gamble forever, but the truth is, arrogance always collapses. My parents thought they could erase me, but the truth is, you can't erase someone who never needed you to define them in the first place.
And me? I walked away. I built my own peace. I built a life where their shadows couldn't reach me.
In the end, they lost everything, not because of me, but because of themselves. And I gained everything, not because of them, but because I finally chose myself. That's the real lesson here. White right pointing backhand index sometimes, the best revenge isn't making them pay. White right pointing backhand index sometimes, the best revenge is living so well that they have to watch. So to anyone listening who feels erased, overlooked, or betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you most, hear this.
You don't need their validation. You don't need their approval. You don't even need their apology.
Your peace, your strength, your happiness will always be the loudest revenge. And trust me, one day, they'll see it. So, what do you think? Was Claire right to cut ties and let karma do the work, or should she have confronted her family directly?
Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one.
And if you've ever been erased or betrayed by family, share your story.
You never know who needs to hear it.
Until next time, remember, living well is the sharpest blade of all.